Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Catholics Against Militarism podcast. This is episode 46, and it's part two of the place where the three roads meet. And in part one, we talked about that. It's a reference to Oedipus Rex and a scene in Oedipus Rex where Sophocles describes what happened when Oedipus killed his father. But I guess metaphorically, we can think about it in part two as any point in your life, in human life, when there's conflict and human passion gets stirred up and there's the spark of potential violence breaking out. And so to me, that's kind of what these three roads represent. You can also think of it as a crossroads or a way of a time of crucial decision making. And so that's the metaphor I'm working with in part two. If you haven't watched part one, it's only 37 minutes long. Go watch that one and then come back and watch this one. And I think this one would make a lot more sense. A lot of us are feeling right now like we as a country or we as a church, even we as individuals, are kind of at a place where the three roads meet right now in this society. We are feeling like Christianity itself is under persecution. You may have heard that yesterday, or depending on when I can get this podcast out, maybe it was 2 days ago, President Trump actually tweeted a tweet by Taylor Marshall, a conservative, traditional, popular podcaster and author, a Catholic. And Taylor Marshall said that there's a war on against Christianity. And the fact that Trump tweeted this was really exciting to a lot of people. I've been listening to Taylor Marshall for a while now, as well as Tim Gordon, someone he used to do podcasts with. They no longer do them together. But this was pretty exciting because it makes us feel like, the president is on our side, that he acknowledges, he sees the culture war that's happening right now. And he's on our side, and it was very encouraging for a lot of people. I have a slightly different take. I think overall it's a great thing, but I have a slightly different take on it. It's been interesting to watch this culture war unfold and to see Catholics becoming sort of, I don't know, it's like we're in a war in a way that we didn't know we were before. Before it was ideological, it was philosophical, it was abstract. These people have these ideas, Catholics have these ideas, secular culture is taking over. But now it's come home in a way, it's accelerated and it's escalated and it's become physical. There are actual churches that have been attacked. After they went after Benjamin Franklin and George Washington statues and Confederate soldier statues, they started coming after Catholic saints. Like the saint, can't pronounce his name, in California, they tore down his statue. There have been priests who have been beat up on the street while they're praying a rosary. There was rumor that the statue of St. Louis had a group of Catholics praying outside it in a vigil to protect it, and some guy with brass knuckles came up and started beating up somebody there. So this is becoming, it's a culture war that's looking more and more like an actual potential civil war. And I don't think I'm overstating that. I think a lot of us feel like this is getting bad. This is getting serious. Violence is breaking out, and now it's coming to our front doors in terms of our churches. And so the question becomes, how are Catholics going to handle this? So I wanted to go over really quickly the church teaching on violence. There's two traditions. You've probably only heard of one of them. I would bet you've only heard of the just war tradition, right? Just defense. But there is another tradition called nonviolence, more specifically gospel nonviolence, rooted in the teachings of Jesus. And so I want to read to you one thing from a letter that was written by the USCCB in 1993, just to clarify what church teaching is on this issue. This is from The Harvest of Justice is Sown in Peace, which was published, a reflection of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops on the 10th anniversary of the Challenge of Peace, November 17th, 1993. They write under two traditions, nonviolence and just war. An essential component of a spirituality for peacemaking is an ethic for dealing with conflict in a sinful world. The Christian tradition possesses two ways to address conflict, nonviolence and just war. They both share the common goal to diminish violence in this world. For as we wrote in the Challenge of Peace, the Christian has no choice but to defend peace. This is an inalienable obligation. It is the how of defending peace which offers moral options. We take up this dual tradition again, recognizing on the one hand, blah, 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 and then it says, throughout history, there has been a shifting relation between these two streams of the tradition, which always remain in tension. So there is this shifting relationship between the two streams of the tradition, nonviolence and just war, And it says they always remain in tension. And I'm sorry, I don't know about you, but every time I read this paragraph, I always think about Don't Cross the Streams from Ghostbusters. That scene when Egon's like, I have to tell you, don't cross the streams. Anyway, enough of that childishness. Back to Catholic teaching. In our church, these two streams of the tradition have always remained in tension. And this is actually pretty serious, even though I'm laughing right now. I need some comic relief in this world. Come on. But it's really important right now when we look around at the violence that we're seeing in our world today, in our country today. I'd like to show you just a few examples of what I'm seeing out there in terms of the way that Catholics are responding to this. And the first thing I want to show you is a small clip of a video made by Tim Gordon, who's another Catholic podcaster. I actually respect him a lot. I listen to him as well. And even though I'm playing a clip, I don't mean to be like singling him out, because he's just expressing what thousands and thousands of people are thinking. It's just a convenient way of kind of showing this particular attitude or position toward violence. And by the way, if you haven't heard of him, he recently got fired from his job. He was a high school teacher, and he taught at a high school in California, and he spoke out against Black Lives Matter by calling it a terrorist organization. And he ended up getting fired from his job. So I have a certain affinity for him because I too teach high school, and I think it's pretty ridiculous and indefensible that somebody should get fired for simply speaking their mind in this atmosphere of cancel culture, silencing and ostracizing people that you don't agree with, especially in an academic setting. To boot, he has 6 children, I believe, 5 or 6 children, and his oldest daughter recently had brain surgery. So he was the sole breadwinner in his family, and now they no longer have health insurance. So I do really have a lot of sympathy for this person, and if you would like to donate to his cause, I'll link to it in the YouTube video. Anyway, he seems like a great person, but I do take issue with one of the things that he said. So I'm going to play a clip of him to show just one kind of reaction to what we're seeing in American society right now.
Yeah, I'm really taken aback. I tell you, it doesn't, because I'm you can't surprise me too much, but I'm taken aback at the state of the world. And I was going to say something else, but I don't even know. I don't even know what's worth saying at this point. It's just the rising tide is Christians no longer misunderstanding the first 3 Christian centuries, where martyrdom is the best way to bear witness. There's no such thing as Christendom. It was a pre-Christendom world. But now we're no longer going to be cowed into just saying, oh, well, let's just be white martyrs, because we already had Christendom. Unfortunately, the Protestants in this country gave it up. But we're not that much better, because we're a bunch of Catholics that essentially gave up the church to the Marxists and the Masons and the homosexualists. So the Protestants gave up America to the secularists. Well, we Catholics gave up the church to the secularists. So let's not get on our high horse. Instead, let's just defend your churches, hashtag defend your churches, as Stephen Harriet would say. Take a picture, send it to me, you and a bunch of the good law-abiding, still law-abiding citizens of your church, all of you with rifles, and say, we will defend our patrimony legally, but we are not going to surrender the church or our lives to devils. We're not going, we're going to follow all the laws, which is what Thomas Aquinas commands us to do. It's what Christ commanded us to do. It's what St. Paul commanded us to do. But we are going to make a statement that we have every right to hold our rifles in front of the church, hold them up proudly, and salute America, and to salute more than America, our great saints. Defend your churches.
All right, you can hear the passion in Tim Gordon's voice. Obviously, this is a man who loves his country, he loves his church, and that's why people love him. That's why so many people listen to him. But you can hear what he said there, something about the first 300 years of the church, when there was only one stream of the tradition, which was the nonviolent tradition. It wasn't until after Augustine and Ambrose and Constantine, really, that we had the 2 streams of the tradition, nonviolence and just war. And it's interesting what he said there. He didn't really carry the thought through, but he seemed to say that we're all kind of over it at this point. Like, we're no longer misunderstanding those 300 years, that was the best way to witness then, and now we have a different way to witness, which he proposes, like standing outside the church with rifles. And I want you to listen to another clip by Taylor Marshall. By the way, I'm sorry that these audio clips are not very high quality. If there are any millennials out there listening, please contact me because I don't know how to make videos. I know there's software that you can use to grab screenshots and do stuff, but I can't figure out how to do it, and I'm scared to download free stuff onto my computer. So if you're a millennial and you'd like to help this old lady figure out how to do YouTube, let me know. In the meantime, take a listen to what Taylor Marshall says.
Number 2, we need big men, intimidating men whenever these things happen. When Archbishop Corleone goes out there, you need to have some larger men out there. Yes, you can have, I don't know about bringing kids, elderly people, but if you watch these videos, I don't know if you've ever gone on YouTube and watched videos of these altercations that are going on. The Antifa people tend to be smaller. I think it's because they're vegans. I like to say vegan because it rhymes with pagan. They're smaller people. They're not like Texas people or Midwestern people, Iowa boys. So just having a group of larger people just scares them. So we don't want any violence. We don't want anyone to get hurt. We don't want punches to be thrown. But just having bigger people around is a deterrent. So if you're guarding a statue, call up a bigger guy. If you're going to go with an archbishop to one of these things, we need some bigger people around. Don't make funny about this. You know it's true. We need bigger people. When there are bouncers around, less fights happen. Just because there's an intimidation factor, like, oh, that guy's kind of big, I don't want to go and try to spray a mace in that guy's face. He might get mad.
All right, so there you have Taylor Marshall. Kind of, Tim Gordon was saying we need to stand outside the churches with rifles to make a statement, and Taylor Marshall is saying we need to surround the priests and who are praying or taking these actions, praying around statues or trying to defend them with these big guys. I think it's so funny when he says, the Antifa people tend to be smaller, maybe because they're vegans. Anyway, I like these guys. Taylor Marshall reminds me a lot of my brother, former Marine, just the way he talks and his old attitude. And I don't think that these guys are advocating violence. Like, Marshall was very clear about that, right? I'm not advocating violence. I don't think Tim Gordon is either. We often tend to think of human conflict as having two options, fight or flight. But I've been reading this book lately called On Killing. It's really interesting. And he actually points out that there's 4 options: fight, flight, posture, or submit. And so actually, I think that what these guys are advocating is posturing, right? A show of strength. And the point of that is to deter violence rather than to advocate for it or invite it. We have to ask the question, though, when we're looking at this graph, even, what does it say? If you're watching YouTube, what does it say on the top? It says the soldier's options. So I understand that all this makes sense on a certain practical level, but is this the mind of Christ, or is this the mind of a soldier? Is this having the mind of Christ, or is this having an actual war mentality? And that's probably why I'm wearing pink today, to combat all of this toxic masculinity. No, I'm just kidding. I don't believe in toxic masculinity. But I do think that these guys are like admirable, they're honorable, they want to do the right thing, and it's only natural to want to defend and protect. But, we have to ask ourselves, like, what are we setting ourselves up for? Taylor Marshall goes on to talk about strength in numbers, and he talks a little bit about defense, which is what we talked about in part 1. So listen to what he says here.
And then number 1 is take up space. Number 2, we need some bigger people. Number 3, bigger groups. There was a good group there around Archbishop Corleone, but we need all of us need to commit to this. We need to get out there. Again, I don't want to endanger elderly people or young people, but we need to be out there with larger groups. Whatever they bring, we need to triple that. This is what we can do. We need to be out there, and we need to be surrounding our bishops and our priests, which is number 4, defend the bishops and the priests at all costs. We should never, our bishops and priests aren't going, if someone starts punching them or attacking them, they're not going to fight back. They're bishops and priests. They're not walking around with a concealed carry. Maybe some of them are, but they're not. They are depending upon us, the lay people, to defend them and to shield them. And they are going to be attacked. I think that's one of the reasons why the bishops in Los Angeles and other places won't do something like this. They're afraid that someone's going to throw a bottle, spray some mace, do some damage, show up with baseball bats with nails through them. So we have to, whatever we do, shield and protect the bishops and the priests. Because if they're going to go out there, like Father Schumacher, Archbishop Corleone, and they're going to say things in public, and they're going to be challenged back, there could be a movement of violence. So we have to protect them. Again, we don't want any violence. I want everyone right now to hear Taylor Marshall is saying we do not want any violent altercations. No violence. We just want to say, don't tear down our statues. If you do tear them down, we're going to bring out our bishops and our priests, and they're going to pray and exercise and lead us in the rosary, and we are going to say this was a sacrilege and it's wrong, and make a statement. And when that happens, we have to protect our bishops and our priests. That's number 4.
This is where Taylor Marshall starts to lose me a little bit. He is encouraging people to go out en masse and gather and put themselves in situations where they are liable to be attacked. In this current culture and everything that's going on, if you're going to go put a target on your back by praying the rosary around a sacred statue that you know Antifa and all these people want to tear down, you are putting yourself in harm's way. He does say over and over and again, we don't want violence, but that's very different than saying don't use violence. He's not preaching nonviolence. He's not telling people to consider the nonviolent stream of the tradition, right? He's not saying don't use violence, don't bring guns, don't bring weapons. He's not saying that. He's saying we don't want violence. Okay, you don't want violence, but you are telling people to go put themselves in a situation where they are highly likely to encounter it. I mean, maybe 80% of the time posturing will work, and you can bring the big guys and the rifles or whatever, and, and the big numbers, and no one will mess with you. But we all know where this is headed. We all know there are people out there who would love nothing better than to get in a fight with some rosary praying Catholics. And so it's only a matter of time before people who are out there doing this are going to find themselves in a situation where they are being attacked and the bishop or the priest is being attacked. So what are people supposed to do then? I mean, to tell people you have to defend and you have to protect, that seems to me to be a pretty much telling them that they have to fight. And so, are people prepared for that? If, on the other hand, you're telling people we're nonviolent, we have to use only the weapons, spiritual weapons, and only pray and be nonviolent, are you really preparing people for that? Most of us haven't been in these situations where we are confronted with people who are going to attack us physically and get violent. And we remember from the episode with Oedipus, right? Remember it said, quick as lightning, my hand did its work. And it was like his hand acted in a violent way before he could even really think about it. It was like instinct. It was like reaction. He said he acted out of anger. I think of Peter, in the Garden of Gethsemane, just drawing his sword. And you have to imagine that if you're in a group and you're saying your rosary and someone comes up with a bat or a gun or a knife and starts kicking your butt, you're probably going to get pretty angry and you're probably going to react in anger and you're probably going to fight back. If you're going to be nonviolent and you're going to go that route, that's not going to be easy. And you need to be prepared, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to do that. If you don't know if you're going to be nonviolent or not, it's probably better to just stay home. I mean, I love our statues and churches as much as the next person, but I don't think we need to be sending people into these highly charged situations where they are completely not ready to encounter it. Because let's face it, the church has not done a good job of teaching people about the nonviolent Jesus and the nonviolent tradition and nurturing that kind of mindset. We all have, because we grow up in this culture, we all have the mindset of soldiers. Even if we don't have the skill of a soldier, we just naturally have the mindset of a soldier. How many of these Catholics who are going out there have seen like 15 years of The Walking Dead, right? Like, how many headshots have we seen on TV? I mean, this is the mentality we are nurtured in from birth. So it takes a lot of work to kind of convert yourself to the nonviolent mind of Christ. And if you haven't done that work, and even if you have, you might not be fully prepared to do that. So I think I don't know, maybe I'm making too big of a deal about it. I'm sure a lot of people are going out and praying by statues and they're not getting attacked. But I just worry about those situations. And I do think that there's a contingent of puppet masters, all the people who have funded Black Lives Matter and the Antifa people, the George Soroses of the world, who want civil war in this country. They want strife. And they want us to fight them. That's why they're attacking the churches. That's why they're attacking Christianity, to get us angry so that we get ready to defend ourselves, and these fights will inevitably break out. So in my opinion, it's all kind of just playing into the devil's plan here. I think we should go the nonviolent route. As Catholics, that's what I believe. However, I don't think any of us are really prepared for it. Even if you've been watching EWTN instead of The Walking Dead for your whole adult life, EWTN won't ever mention gospel nonviolence. I mean, literally, Father McCarthy tried to be on one of their shows once. He told me the story once and talk about gospel nonviolence, and EWTN told him, "No, we're a Catholic station. We don't talk about that. You're not allowed to talk about that here." So none of us have ever really been nurtured in the nonviolent mind of Christ, and understand what that really, really means and what that looks like. Let me show you a few examples of what I've seen online, and just to show you, I think, the mindset of most Catholics. Here's a few comments. These comments were made on Taylor Marshall's videos. They were made on Twitter, various places. Honestly, a lot of us are more than fed up already, and we're just waiting for a legitimate use of self-defense to present itself. I don't mean to laugh, but you have to admire this guy for his honesty. I am ready to fight, and I am just waiting for a legitimate chance to do it. Here's another one. When Pope Francis said he wanted to, quote, abolish, unquote, the just war doctrine, my first thought was, great, preventative nuclear first strike is totally on the table. So this person is clearly itching for a fight as well. I know this person is being a little cheeky, but still. That same person actually put up the meme of, some guy threatened a parish in San Diego, and he called for a mob to come out. And he was like, they're a bunch of Trump supporters, and they don't wear masks in church, and let's go get them. And he published the address of the church. And someone on Twitter said, at some point, there's going to be a very unfortunate confrontation between Marxist thugs and completely fed up Christians. Which side are you going to choose now, Bishop Barron? And just to see what would happen, I responded to this person actually, and I said, we need to choose the side of Jesus, who preached a way of nonviolent love of friends and enemies. And she wrote back, I came not to bring peace but a sword. Another one, it took what, a few hundred years of Muslim expansion and oppression in order to fire up the Crusades? The just war doctrine needs dusting off and a proper brushing up. If you're watching the video, you can see an image I found online. I don't even know where this came from, but it's a picture of someone dressed up in a crusade outfit standing next to a bunch of policemen. I saw someone else saying that you don't pacify evil, you eliminate it. Eliminate sounds like destroy, right? Sounds like kill. Sounds like sounds like war. And another person wrote, we need to rise up like St. Joan of Arc for Jesus and his kingdom. And this person went on to claim that she was wondering if God was trying to tell her to take up the sword because her confirmation saint was St. Joan. I feel bad publishing these people's information on the video, but it's all public anyway, so I figure it's okay. One person asked, what about bearing arms to defend our churches? And someone else wrote, yes, there will be blood the moment those thugs start disrupting the masses. And then Church Militant comes out with a video called Glory of War, with a guy with a huge machine gun in the image. Now, the whole time they're talking about spiritual warfare, and Church Militant does this all the time. They always talk only about spiritual warfare, spiritual warfare, spiritual, just spiritual. But people aren't getting it because all these comments that I'm seeing on social media, they're not talking about spiritual warfare. They're talking about bringing your guns into the churches and killing people who come in and try to disrupt it. That's what they're talking about. Now, I know it's Twitter, it's social media, people's bark is bigger than their bite, etc. You can't take all these things at face value, but I do think it betrays a certain confusion. On the one hand, it's like all these Catholics want to pretend like they're preaching peace and not promoting violence, but on the other hand, they will not promote nonviolence. So there's this huge gray area. There's a lot of ambiguity, and I think in a lot of ways they like to just leave it that way because they don't want to address this topic head on. I know everyone always piles on Bishop Barron, and I hate to be one more person jumping on that bandwagon, but I remember he did a video called Loving Your Enemies. I think it was over Lent. And the whole thing was about forgiving and loving your enemies. And, again, just as an experiment, I posted on there, I said, what about when your government tells you to kill your enemies? What should you do then? And, I feel like it's a really fair question, but they deleted it. Maybe it went to their spam folder or their trash and they never saw it, but I have a feeling it got deleted. Because I posted it again and it didn't show up, and then I posted it from another account and then it still didn't show up. So I think they just didn't want that question out there, and I think that's what a lot of these Catholic commentators they don't want to address this head on. So they'll say spiritual warfare all day long, and then let everyone know that, or let everyone believe that, but real warfare is completely fine too. All right, you guys might have seen this picture. Here's one last example. The couple that defended their home from the, quote, protesters who broke through their gate. They lived in a gated community and they stood out there with their guns. They were on Tucker Carlson, and, I'm not trying to say people don't have a right to self-defense, but what I'm saying is this the mind of Christ? That's what I'm saying. Is this the mind of Christ? Do you recognize Christ when you look at this picture? Church Militant is always talking about spiritual warfare. They never really talk directly about warfare. They avoid that, but then they publish this cartoon. I guess those people, instead of having guns, are depicted as being like hippie people, and they're saying, this isn't working when confronted with the violent, quote, protesters, rioters, whoever they are. So this isn't working. So what's the message there? If we've got two streams of tradition, nonviolence and just war, right? I don't like to classify, Jesus as being a hippie with a guitar and flowers in his hair. That's not what he was. But where would he fall in those two traditions? And it seems to me that Church Militant, the message here is clear. Nonviolence doesn't work. So we have to use just defense. And, I could think of another situation in which nonviolence didn't work. It looked like defeat, didn't it, when Christ died? And so this idea that nonviolence doesn't work and only violence works, I think there's a real problem there. And so, I'm just saying that I kind of wish that these Catholics would come out and just take a stand. Do you think people should have guns in churches? Do you think they should kill people over a statue? Do you think, where do you stand on this? What exactly are you saying when it comes to using violence to protect a statue, protect a church, protect a person, protect a country, and justify that according to Catholic teaching? But they like to all avoid it and not talk about it. By the way, I know I keep saying this is my last example and then I keep talking, but the famous, it's read at every single wedding, right? 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious, boastful, or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Well, look on Google, just look on Google Images and Google Corinthians, 13, 1 Corinthians 13. What you'll see pull up, it says love protects. love protects. And it's strange because that's actually not what's in the Bible. I don't know what kind of translation that is, but Father McCarthy actually pointed this out to me. He said, it's everywhere. Love protects. So, is that just a bad translation that caught on? Or is there something going on here where, they, whoever they are, want Christians to believe that their duty is to protect and defend more than or rather than to love, because it does not say love protects in Corinthians 13. We're just going to wrap up here by playing the clip that Trump referenced when he retweeted, not retweeted, but he tweeted about Taylor Marshall saying that there's a war on Christianity. So I want to play you a clip from that interview where he said that. Just listen 1 second, and then I'll wrap it up pretty quick, I promise.
Obviously, there's deeper issues there, but what kind of effect do you think that will have on people, because we are still in an election year? It's just 5 months away.
I don't know. I mean, certainly, President Trump is, according to the polls, trailing and not doing as well as he did. But I think also people are realizing that I don't want to live in America that's chaotic. I want a rule of law. I like what America was and is. Yes, we've had our problems. We've had our sins as a nation. We've had slavery. But as a nation, we've been able to, often through blood, to repent and to change our ways. And we're not perfect either. I mean, I'm thinking of something like, we have a major problem with abortion in our land. But that doesn't mean that we burn the flag and we hate our country and we reject everything. What we've done as Americans is we've always purged that which is evil, wrong amongst us. And I think that's the spirit that people have. Hopefully, as we move into the election year, they can realize Trump's not perfect. None of us are perfect. George Washington wasn't perfect. Roosevelt wasn't perfect. Even our Catholic saints that are in these statues, they weren't perfect either. Only God is perfect. And we can work together to not burn everything that's America to the ground. And instead, we can simply fix what's wrong and cherish what's been good and wholesome in our history.
I know it's not right to pick apart what somebody says, off the cuff. He's obviously not writing things down. He's not reading something that he wrote down. He's just speaking off the cuff. But I thought it was interesting that he said that we often through blood repent. And I believe he was referencing maybe the Civil War. Often through blood, through the shedding of blood, we repent. And then he said, we purge that which is evil among us. And, let's think about this. Isn't that kind of what the neo-pagans and the Marxists are trying to do right now in their attack on America? They're trying to purge what's evil, and they're not afraid to do that through blood. And then when we hear Catholics online saying that blood is going to be shed if these people come into our churches, none of this bodes well. None of this bodes well. And I don't know exactly what he was trying to say, but the fact that he inserted the words often through blood as if violence is some kind of, purification rite that purges the evil among us. I think back to that comment that the person made. We cannot pacify evil. We must eradicate it. Isn't that all kind of the same spirit? And when we complain about the neo-pagan culture, do we recognize that our just defense theory came from the pagans? When we are following the just defense theory instead of following Christ in his nonviolent way of love of friends and enemies, when we choose to take the self-defense route, the just defense route, how different are we as Christians from either the pagans or the neo-pagans? I don't know. Those are just me. That's just me kind of thinking out loud. I think there's a lack of clarity here, but I don't think that people like, Tim Gordon and Taylor Marshall, who I'm just using as examples again in this video, they're just examples of a much bigger mentality. It goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. I don't think that they're being duplicitous. I don't think they're, talking out of both sides of their mouth. I think the lack of clarity on this and the lack of being able to directly speak about it is a sign of a bigger problem in the church. And I think this is a kind of result of the just defense mentality. And it's bound to be somewhat ambiguous. It's bound to be incredibly subjective, and there is an overall lack of clarity. So that's kind of where I stand. If you've made it this far, I would like to send you a gift. I think I have about 200 people on YouTube that consistently watch my videos. And if you are one of them, and if you have made it this far, there's a box of books that Father McCarthy has written that are sitting in a basement somewhere. And the guy who has been the steward of these materials, who's been giving them out for decades to people, called me the other day and he's like, "What if I kick the bucket? Ellen, what's going to happen to all these materials?" So I thought to myself, well, I could drive out to the East Coast with the U-Haul and get them, or we could try to distribute them. So Father McCarthy has, if you're interested in studying gospel nonviolence a little more, there's nothing I can recommend more than Father McCarthy's materials. His series Behold the Lamb is a playlist on my channel, and there are, I think, 14 lectures as a part of that series. But there are 3 of them on my playlist. By the end of the summer, my goal is to get all of Behold the Lamb on the playlist, but you can listen to the first 3 on my channel, and then after that, there's a link where you can follow to find the rest of them online. You can also listen to the playlist Top 10 Questions and Answers About Gospel Nonviolence. That was my gateway drug to looking into all this back when I thought all of this was crazy and stupid. And then these 2 books, Just War Theory, The Logic of Deceit, which is a book that Father McCarthy wrote that's incredible. It will make you think. And the other one is called All Things Flee Thee, for Thou Fleest Me, by Father McCarthy. And it's a cry to the churches and their leaders to stop running from the nonviolent Jesus and his nonviolent way. So if you send me an email at contact@catholicsagainstmilitarism.com, out of my own pocket, I will start sending out these books to you. If you are a regular listener and you'd like some of these materials, I'd love to get them into your hands. After I send you your gift, if you want to then send a donation or a check to Bob, who is the guy who's been handing out these materials for years, I'll give you his address and you can send him a check and pay it forward. So you can pay for the next person's shipment. That way, we're sending a little bit of money to Bob to cover the shipping costs, and we can also get some of these materials out into the world and out into people's hands. So once you've read the book, feel free to pass it along to a friend, or if you have a library in your church, you could donate it to the library and leave it there for more people to discover that way. But feel free to send me an email, contact@catholicsagainstmilitarism.com. Give me your name and your address. I promise I won't sell it. I wouldn't know how to sell it, even if I wanted to. I won't do anything with it other than send you a free gift. I would like to get some of these materials out into the world. And the other thing that you can do if you like these videos, actually you should click like. My husband has been telling me for months, you have to tell people to subscribe and you have to tell people to click like, but I always forget. So another way you can easy way to evangelize, if you think this is a good message or it's thought-provoking, you can click like, and that means it'll tell YouTube that it's a good video, and then it'll show the video to more people. They might get intrigued, they might click, and they might discover something or start thinking about things they hadn't thought of before. Please, I hope I get some addresses in my email inbox, and I'd love to get some of these materials out to you guys. I think that's it. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you again soon. Peace be with you.